Well, at the start of my Africa adventure in 1994, my daughter came, Dana Washington, came into my room, and she had been watching the world news, and she said, Rwanda, Dad, something's really bad happening there, and can you do something about that? I said, Dana, what do you want me to do? She says, well, it's like 1 million people have been slaughtered, Dad, and since you have a foundation, why don't you try to help them? So what I did, I got on the phone and I called the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, and I would just get an answering machine. So I called Northwest Medical Teams, which is an organization that takes doctors and nurses all over the country, all over the world to help. And they're stationed in Beaverton, Oregon, which is only about 10 miles from where I was living. I called them and said, you know, I'd like to donate some money. So when I said I was going to donate some money, then they found out who I was. They said, well, wait, let's talk. Let me let you talk to the leader of our group. I said, okay. So I talked to him. He says, would you be willing to go with us to Rwanda? And I said, well, go to Rwanda? I started smiling. I said, I've never been to Africa. There's a war going on, well, between the Hutus and the Tutsis, and all these people are being killed. I said, I don't mind donating money, but about going over there, I don't mind going in a month or so. They said, no, we're leaving in a week and a half, and we would love for you to go because it could help raise a lot of money having your visibility there. So I said, well, let me think about it for the weekend. And after the weekend, I talked to my wife and my kids, and they said, Dad, you need to go. So I called up Northwest Medical Teams and said, I'll go. Had to go get my shots, a lot of shots. Had to get some different kind of clothing, and I'm off to Rwanda, I thought. And so I hadn't met anybody, but I was supposed to meet all the doctors in London. I caught a flight from Portland to Minneapolis, from Minneapolis to London. That's where I met about 10 doctors and nurses that were preparing to go over to Rwanda to work. From there, we flew to Nairobi, Kenya. From Nairobi, Kenya to Entebbe, Uganda. We were stranded in Entebbe, Uganda for a while because we didn't know how we were going to get from point A to point B, because they weren't just regular planes. You had to get a ride from the Red Cross or some kind of relief agency. So we stayed in Uganda for a while, Entebbe, and then all of a sudden we did find a ride from the Canadian Red Cross. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, we land in Zaire. We landed about 4 o'clock, and the military guys helped us unpack the plane and put it on the truck and told us to keep our heads down. I said, well, we have to keep our heads down because you guys don't have visas to be in this country. And if you don't want, they told us, you don't want to see the prisons here in Goma, Zaire. And so we landed and we got to a place where we were staying with the Venice Relief Agency. It was called ADRA, Venice Relief Agency. We stayed there, and then we started working, trying to find a place to work for the camps, to build a camp. But what we did learn when we got there is that we couldn't have an independent camp away from all the other rescue teams, because first of all, that means you would have to pack up your medicine at night and bring it, and it just wouldn't be there. The tent would be taken down, probably stolen, and everything else like that. So after a day or so of looking, we decided to be with all the other relief agencies that was in a camp called Magumga, where 300,000 people were there that had fled Rwanda. And Goma, Zaire, I think it's only about 15, 20 miles or 30 miles from Rwanda. And they all were coming in because they either get out the country or they would be killed. So we worked there for 5 or 6 days, and we had to work. It wasn't going around taking pictures. We had to go around and work. We picked up people that were too weak to come to the clinic, and we would carry them to the clinic. And what they did, they would find out who's in the most need of help, and we would take them in. But you'd have hundreds and hundreds of people in line, women having babies and everything else like that. It was just terrible. Next time I came back, I told you the guy that was working in the refugee camp with me in the clinic, his name was Vianney. He was Rwandan born, but living in Houston. And he had flown from Houston to try to find his 2 brothers that were part of the genocide, wondering if they were alive or dead. But he was, he was going to find them. When I went back to Nairobi the second time, that's the time I knew I was in trouble, because we were going back to find 2 people, 2 brothers basically. We found them in Nairobi in an area which is the largest slum in the continent of Africa. It's called Kibera. When I came back from the second trip, I realized then I was going to do something about Africa, and so I've been 33 times after that. The next time I went, I had a couple of friends that were doctors at Gold's Gym and a couple of nurses. I paid for their way. We went back and we started working at a school. And the people said, you can use this school, but you have to do the kids first. So I said, oh, we'll see the kids first. Made quite a few mistakes. First of all, we said we'll do 100 people before lunch and 100 after lunch. So we gave them all numbers. Okay, I didn't think about it. So one number for one person, that's what we thought. But we gave a number one, let's say to a mother, she has 6 kids. So she would bring 6 kids in. I said, oh, we're in trouble. Then, because we forgot to take the numbers away from them, when they would go outside, they would give that number to somebody else. And it was only supposed to be 1 to 100 before lunch. So we were there a whole lot longer than we wanted to be. Then we realized 2 things. It was to be one number for one person, and we had to take and collect the numbers. We went back, I've kept taking doctors and nurses back. I think I've taken as many as probably 40 doctors and nurses from the United States to Nairobi, Kenya, and we did medical clinics. On top of that, I would hire doctors and nurses and med students from Kenya, and it was not as expensive as you thought. If you paid the doctors $50 a day, that was a lot of money for them. If you paid the nurses $10 a day, they were unbelievably happy. And if you paid the med students about $5 a day, they were unbelievably happy because we would feed them and everything else like that. So keep going. People say, well, where did you guys stay? Did you have any fun? Well, I really didn't have any fun because I felt the stress of being in charge of 15 to 16 people. But the question was, how did you always fund all of these different trips? Well, first of all, it was my salary. I was making money. I raffled off my 928 Porsche. We raised $35,000. I used my severance money from the NBA, which was another $25,000 or $30,000 when I could to take groups over. And it wasn't as expensive as you would think. The average trip would be, for me and one other person, maybe $10,000. But when I took the big group, maybe as much as $30,000. The clinic started in 1986. We didn't start going to Africa until 1994. And it's been going ever since like that.